Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So just a small recap on what we saw last class in this context of data binding. The full unit actually is talking about binding data from a back end store to a front end control. We talk about actually some aspects, some properties we are going to deal with in order to fulfill this binding, this data population. We are going to read the data from a store. The store actually here we mean either a database management system with its entities, or we talk about a local. Here we talk about the browser's cache or the local memory data store, like an array or an array list, something like that, that holds data. And we're going to use the data from here or from there to link it to a control, which is available in the front-end API. This is the main content of this unit number 4. And this is actually the definition of what is data binding. We saw types, 2 types mainly, the single binding or the simple binding, and the repeated value binding or the multi-value binding, via which actually you are able to either populate one single control with one single value, which is actually here we talk about the single and the simple binding, and we saw the multi-value, which is actually context of populating a list of let's say controls, or one control with numerous values. We talk about the list controls, a list box, a checkbox list, or radio button list, or things like that. That they can receive multi-values with indexes. Here actually you see the example of initialization of a variable that we're going to bind to a single control. We are going to use the value of this variable, and we're going to bind it to a control. The control in this context is a label. In this example here is a label. And here it would be actually populated. So whatever the value that this variable here, it's a user-defined transact count. It's a user-defined. Whatever the value that holds, once binded, and it would be binded actually when the event is fired, and the event here is the page load. Means once the page has been loaded, the variable would have its initial value, and the bind would happen. So wherever we find this variable available in between those indicators, it would be replaced with its value. So in front end, we'll be seeing this script here. There were transactions today, and here we will be seeing the value from the back end file, which is 10 in this example. And also the same way here, if we are having a predefined, let's say, data sources, data source providers. Like in this example here, we are requesting from the let's say for the interpreter libraries to give us a value. And this example actually we're talking about the browser utilized. It would be actually replacing the call with the value. Actually, and we saw in the lab that he's replacing us with Chrome in my example, because I was using the Chrome as a browser. So that's in this example we are able to take the property of the whatever we are going to declare. Actually, it is the property value here, and to bind it to all the places where it is called. The syntax via which we call a value from a backend source. the call here would be effective once the binding happens. Who can repeat what I said right now? Nashwa, can you repeat what I said right now? Ruhaina, can you repeat what I said right now? Shall I give -1 to all of you now? Do you accept? I'll pass it. The same way, actually, we may populate the same controls differently, because this control here is given an ID. And we can do the population differently. See how I'm doing. When the same event, the control ID, in our example, is a label. But whatever the control is, it has an ID. And the ID will be actually tackled to call a property. And the property will be actually edited by giving a value. Here it is. And this is a concatenation. So whatever we're going to give in first line, we will add to it. We are not going to replace. We add to it concatenation, this value. And you concatenate also this value also. So it is the same result. It is the same output, but differently. We are not using the bind method. We're not making binding here. We are just populating the data into the control. We'll be having the same result. Great. Repeated value, actually, it's a context of populating a control, but I'm sorry for that. It is a context of populating a control that might have a multi-value at one shot. We talk, as for an example, about an array. So it will give us a list of values that would be actually be populated at one shot also. So the repeated values will be given here from a source. From a source that has to be actually binded into a control that can accept multi-values. Example, the grid view. The list box checkbox list, radio button list. So many there are. Immediately just let's pass. So this is actually a path via which actually we do the binding, and you have to remember it very clear. And it has to be actually in your mind clearly set and clearly understood. First, number one, actually you have to specify the source. Actually, then from where we get the source, there are options. There is no one unique value source. As we said earlier, we may go to the data source from a backend, from a database, or from a local source like an array list. It's an array. Great. And then after second step, we have to make the link. We have to specify that we are referring to the source to be utilized to populate the control. Which control is linked to which data source? This is it. So we see an example in white. Step number 3 is to do the binding by calling the method responsible for the binding. So in another word, this is the data source. We are having the data source. Yes, and the data source actually is indicated through a local created, let's say, variable. It's an array, and this array is being populated with values. We are going to add first value, second value, third value, and so on, as many as we need. It will not say no. And we are going to link this data source to a control. In our example, we have a list. We have a list actually that we are going to use it to display all of those values. So we link the list to the data source, which is the fruit here, which is actually the array. So the list item data source is this fruit. The fruit is the one declared locally, and it is populated with those data. And it would play the role of the data source to the list item we have in our page. So this is an example of a list. We saw that in the lab also. And the data source of that list is the declared array. Doing that and give it an effect. To give us the effect, actually, we have to do the data bin. We have to call the data bin method. Coherent way of what I just was explained. It is inside the event page load. Exactly what we were saying. But here we are populating numerous controls. We have a list. We have a drop-down list, checkbox list, radio button list. All of them, they are actually pointing the same data source. After pointing and making the links, data source to the source, the control to the data source, control to data source, control to data source, as many as we need, as many as the page actually is required. We do the binding. The binding actually is through this word. This word actually it is to indicate that all what comes after and this scope. What is this scope? Means what comes in this block. Or it would be actually binded. Actually, it would actually have an effect. Good. The outcome would be something similar to this. What is this kiwi, pear, mango, whatever? They are the values here we have. We are populating. Great. Immediately, and now we continue this new. Actually, we talked about the two properties that the binding that forces us to follow in order to accomplish the context of the binding, whether we are talking about a single value binding or multi-value binding, which are the data source and data source property and the data bind method. Yes, great. And we presented that every single control has a list of properties that we may utilize to accomplish the control of the control. Control and a control. They have properties available to give us a chance to control this control. See the phrase I'm saying, control a control. It's a sense of managing the control. The control is the .NET functionality. Here we talk about controls in plural. So the functionality is the tools available through the .NET platform. We have to refer to, and the management would be actually populating the data, changing the name, changing the formatting, all the aspects that you may do, all the activities you may do on a control. It is a matter of controlling the control. Thus, here in this position only, let's see an example. This is actually a simple HTML, let's say, component. It is a list, it is a select that holds two properties we're going to control, and it would make you understand and actually discuss this. And this is from a real world. We have a text because at the end of the day, this list here, this select, will give us an output similar to this box here. See a kiwi, pear, mango. It will give us an outcome exactly like this one. But in background, what are they? The text and the value. The end user will be able only to see the text. The system will point the text using the value. So this is a property, and this is another property. This is a property, and this is another property. So those two properties, they are actually options that we may refer to in order to control a control. They are properties we may refer to manage a control. The example given to us here would push us to understand that to reach a specific value or specific, let's say, outcome, a specific given option, we have to refer to an index. And we know that when we talk about a list control, list box or checkbox list or any, there is an index that we have to refer to in order to manage a specific value. The index here would be replaced by the value. Index number 1, index number 2, index number 3, index number 4, index number 5, index number 6, and so on. And this way, the value, it has to be actually something that the system can understand. And we as users, developers, we have to find easy to understand. So the number 1, it's not a secret that we have to use 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. No, and so on. We have to use values to be unique. That's it. The system will understand, and we as developers or users, when we are in the implementation phase, we have to see and understand. This is a value, it is unique, and it is pointed to this first text, and so on. This is a value, and it is unique, and it is pointed to the second text, and so on. Regardless, so there is an index that would point a value. Once in this event handler, the list box, the ID is my list box, the name is my list box, is the one. Once the index has been changed, what does it mean? Once the user clicks on this or this or this and so on, once the index selected has been changed, the effect would happen. What is the effect? What is coming in this scope? In this block. What is it? The label message. What is the label message? We have a label down. Here it is in this position. Would have the text property, would have this value, plus a concatenation of this value also. So the first part you picked and would be replacing this block by the text of the selected index from the list my list box. This is the list my list box. This is the list my list box. And selected index, what is it? Whatever the user clicks, the first, the second, the third, and so on. What would happen? The text will be written here in this position. Let's see. Apricot, CD apricot. You picked what he clicked here, apricot. Then the same line, we will add concatenation, which has the key, also the value here, not the text. The value from the selected index from the same list. The value, number 5. If we count, Q is 1, beer is 2, mango is 3, berry is 4, apricot is 5. It's correct. So here we are referring to a value field, a property, to control, let's say, a list box. And the same thing happens if we are dealing with a different list control, like the checkbox list or the radio button list, things like that. We have a text and we have a value. The last aspect behind the bindle is using the IRO.NET. The IRO.NET actually is a context. We defined the unit number 3, and we talked that it is one solution to let us connect the front-end APIs into the back-end technology, means the ASPX pages into the database engine, and the database itself. IRO.NET, active data object. It is a group of libraries through the .NET platform to help us achieve the connectivity from the front end till the back end, from the صفحات till the قاعدة البيانات. Thus, let's see this example here very briefly. We have inside the page load. Let me maximize the view for your visualization only. Great. We have a block of script inside the page load. This block actually, it is controlled by an is post back. We define this is post back in unit number 1. We say that it is a solution that avoids the round trip, and it controls. It's not avoid. It helps us to avoid, but it is to control the round trips. What is this round trip, or what are the round trips? We say that the round trips, they are the request to be sent again and again from the front end, from the صفحات, from the pages, to the database engine. The post back again and again and again. It is a control that helps us to read those post backs. Means any request to be resent again to the server, it might be controlled using this property, is post back. So this block of script, it is controlled using this is post back. Means whether it has been sent back to the server or not, the request, the load is being sent back or not. In this example, actually this block would execute only if it is not being sent back to the server. Why? Because as you can see here, it's, let me maximize. Yes, it is not, see the exclamation mark at the beginning. The exclamation mark actually indicates not, is the controversial case. Is post back, not is post back. And this block would be executed if it has not been sent back to the server. Means it would be executed only at first time. First time of what? When the event has been launched. Means when the event has been launched, for the first time, this block would be executed. Next time, once sent back, no, it will not. What is the block? It is to read from the table test. Select start from test. We have actually a connection string, and we are going to populate a control drop-down list. We are going to set a data source to be the result of this query, execute reader, and we define the execute reader also from the unit 1. Select star from test, and we are going to specify the property field, text field, and the value field with those two, let's say, values, the name and the password. We will read the values from this query, retrieved using this query, and we are going to populate the text field with a name, reading from here, from the test table, and the value field from this, actually, with a password from this table test. Then after, a bind would be actually called, data bind method. Then after the connection we open, we close. We know since unit number 1, all of this, you know it. This is not new to you. We saw all the details. Come back to the recorders, please. Just the new thing is that we are doing this thing in the page load. We are making it use under the control is post back. Means we are going to do it in this example only for the first time when the page is loaded. Then we are making a data bind here because we are referring to the multi-value binder. This binder actually, it is this binder is based on the binder technique. It is not only just population of a control, simply just select and populate. No, it is based on the technique of binder. Any questions, please? The outcome of this block and the explanation is exactly what I was saying. The outcome is something similar to this. Life cycle, it is exactly what we saw in unit number 1, an object which is the ASPX page to be created. Then after the init and the load page would be fired, the events. Then after, all the controls in the page would be loaded. After that, actually, if there is an update or delete or any activity that the user has done in the page would happen. Then after the pre-render event would be fired, then the rendering activity would be done and the upload of the page would be set. Yes, and then after the rendering would be actually terminated. This is the life cycle, and unit number 4 has been terminated. Just as passed to unit number 5, which is about data controls. Data controls actually they are the .NET tools available for us. We define them and we see their usability, where and when and what to use the controls. First definition, actually, the controls we are going to tackle at the beginning here, they are very famous to us. We know the grid view, first of all. It's a sort of a customizable grid inside the ASPX pages. We may drag and drop, we may utilize from the tools for different purposes, especially for linking a data source from a back end to front end API. Regardless, controls, they are tools from the .NET platform that would help us.
جهينة نزل لنا هذا الشابتر.
أنا شابتر
5.
Yeah, I will, sure. I said the controls in general, they are tools from the .NET control. full stop. Those three actually, they are very helpful and very handy and very actually common to use. We saw them so many times, and we are going to continue seeing them. But theoretically, we are defining them now. The grid view is one sort of a grid that will give us the chance to control the visualization of a bulk of data from a back end in a sort of a grid. Means a table, no more, no less. The details view is another control. It's another control. It's a sort of a grid, yes, but it deals with one row per output. What does that mean? Means if we are just retrieving one record from a table inside a database, so we better use the details view, not the grid view. So to display one record, it's better to go for the details view, not the grid view, for a better management. More than that, there is the form view control, which is actually 100% similar to the details view, yet it gives us the chance to display the one record retrieved in a flexible way, in a flexible layout. In the sense of, if we are just retrieving one record, but we are not going to display it in just one line. We are going to display values in different shapes, in different positions, in more than one line. So there is a context of flexibility we needed. The form view is the good option. If you are just retrieving one row, and that's it, so the text view is our option. If you are just retrieving a context of a bulk of data in a sort of a table, the grid view is the option. In our cases, those are three controls that would help us retrieve a bulk of data from a backend. Different capabilities will push us to choose this or that. Mainly, actually, the capabilities we talk about the size of the data and the format of the data. Formatting is actually talk about the shape, the layout of the data retrieved. The grid view, as we said, it is a context of a table to represent the controls, so to represent, sorry, the data retrieved in rows and columns. Actually, the record from a database table or entity would be represented as a row inside the grid view. The column, sorry, the field in the database entity will be represented in a column inside the grid view. And this is actually the visual. This is how we visualize a table, actually. This is how we visualize an entity from a database. And it is exactly to manifest the content of an entity as if it is real inside the database. Rows and columns, fields and records. And this is exactly what the grid view do, or what the grid view does. The grid view is a good option, actually, because it is equipped already with predefined functionalities. And those functionalities, they actually given us 100% strong functions ready-made. Actually, we are just required to activate them once needed. Example of sorting, selection, given other options like if we are indexing the entity with an ID, it gives us the chance to edit and update. There are predefined functions that the grid view enhances. We just have to activate the function, and that's it. We do not have to write any single command. Once needed, the grid view actually is capable to give us the chance to control the content of the grid view. What does it mean? An example of a grid view is a table. group of rows, and group of columns. A row is a record, a column is a field. Great. So at the end of the day, it's a table. So the grid view has a disadvantage. Once you are required a task to, for example, to swap the order of the fields, columns, or you are required to delete a field, a column. The grid view does not give you this option. The grid view makes it trouble for you, but gives you the chance to do so manually. There is an auto-generate actually option or property of the grid view that you may turn off, and gives you actually the chance to do whatever you want to the table. You hide a column, you change the order, you do whatever you do. Means this table here, once you drag and drop through the code or whatever, the control, if you want to modify the order of the fields, you can do that. If you want to delete one field, you can do that. But how? By turning the option auto-generate columns into false. And then after, using the HTML content, you play around with the columns or whatever you want inside the tags. The tags means you're actually talking about the HTML. I'll give you an example only. And we stop here. This is an example of a grid view. This is a grid view. And the auto-generate option is true. It's set to true. So we cannot modify the columns or any field here. We have to change this true into false. And then after, we do our modification as if we are dealing with HTML simply. Thank you very much for this follow-up. I'll stop at this level. If you hear your name, just say yes, please. Very briefly and very quickly, I will not delay.